You know, Senator, as you said, I really want to be careful not to be armchair quarterbacking others. I think the National Guard, we have seen, can play a very important role in crowd
excuse me
control.
for interrupting.
Yeah.
Boy, I sure, you know, I'm not trying to be rude, but my time's limited. Well, who made the call not to, based on your information, who made the call not to call out the FBI, whether they should have or shouldn't?
Not to call the FBI?
I'm sorry, I'm tired. The National Guard.
Well, I would defer to others who are more involved in that discussion, but from what I have heard, what I have read, my understanding is that at one stage of the process, the local government was of the view that it did not need the National Guard's assistance.
Who do you mean by the local government? The mayor?
Yes.
So the mayor didn't call out the National Guard?
At the beginning.
What do you mean by the beginning?
Well, you know, in the day or two leading up to the 6th.
Okay.
Then as to exactly how it played out on the 6th itself,
I understand,
you know, I'm not as
but
sure about. Yeah.
I mean, clearly our people were overrun by the nut jobs. So we're making progress here, okay? So the mayor or the city government decided not to call out the FBI, the National Guard ahead of time. What about the House Sergeant at Arms?
I don't know what role the House Sergeant at Arms played with respect to the National Guard.
Okay. How about the Senate Sergeant?
Same answer.
Okay. How about the Capitol Police, the Chief of Capitol Police? Did the Chief of Capitol Police make the call not to call out the National Guard?
I don't know the answer to that. My understanding is that the law enforcement officials here with responsibility over the Capitol, that there were differing views about whether or not the National Guard was appropriate and when at what level. But all I really know on that is what same thing you've seen, you know, in the press coverage of the events.
Okay, that's enough on that. I listened to your comments about diversity, and I thank you for your good work there. I think any fair-minded person has to conclude that diversity is a strength, not a weakness. But this subject comes up a lot, and I think it's going to come up a lot again. And that's not a criticism; that's just an observation. Do you believe that the FBI is a systemically racist institution?
No. Now, having said that, I do believe the FBI needs to be more diverse and more inclusive than it is, and that we need to work a lot harder at that, and we're trying to work a lot harder on that.
Do you believe that the FBI is a systemically sexist or misogynistic institution?
Again, that's not the way I would describe the FBI that I know and see every day. But again, it's a place where we need to be more diverse and inclusive, and we need to work harder at that. And we are working hard at that, and we've got progress that we still need to make to at least to be satisfactory by my standards.
Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Director, have you ever been to Hong Kong?
No.
Wonderful place, wonderful people. The Chinese Communist Party is destroying it. If Congress passed a bill and said to the good people of Hong Kong who yearn for freedom, come to America. We're going to follow our friends in Britain. Say, come here. You want to get out from under the thumb of the Communist Party, come to America. We welcome you. Do you think the FBI and law enforcement has the ability to screen for spies? One of the criticisms of the proposition I just stated is, well, we would be letting in spies. Do you think, based on your knowledge of security, that we could catch most of the spies? Well,
I yield to no one in my faith and confidence in the great work of the men and women of the FBI, but I will tell you that the Chinese counterintelligence threat is the greatest threat certainly the greatest counterintelligence threat that we face as a country.
Right.
And the sheer number of what we would refer to as non-traditional collectors working on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party is something that is a massive resource challenge for the FBI.
That was probably an unfair question. I'm not asking you to gather. End quote. Did you write that?
I co-wrote that article, yes, sir.
Okay. When you wrote it, did you believe it?
I did.
Okay. All right, let's start back down on this end. Ms. Al-Madani, tell me about this doctrine of qualified immunity that we're discussing here in Congress and in the newspapers.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Qualified immunity applies in 1983 cases as well as Bivens actions to law enforcement officers.
Right.
Unless there is a clearly established constitutional violation, they are subject to qualified immunity. They are immune.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go to Judge Hunt. Judge, what is the standard? I'm sorry, I keep bumping my mic. What's the standard for granting a motion for summary judgment in federal court?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Summary judgment motions in federal court are evaluated under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 56. The question is whether there is a genuine issue of material fact that will require a trial. The moving party has the burden of proof of establishing that there is no genuine issue of material fact and that judgment should be granted as a matter of law. If the moving party does not meet that burden, then summary judgment is denied and the case goes forward to trial.
Okay. So basically it's just, are the facts in dispute and is law in your favor?
That's probably a shorthand for it, but really it's, are there material facts in dispute? Because in my experience, there are often factual disputes, but the question is whether they are material to the resolution of the issue.
Otherwise you wouldn't be in court.
Exactly.
Judge Hugh, tell me about New York Times v. Sullivan.
I believe that was a First Amendment case, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Senator, and about free speech. But in my 5 years of being a judge and 25 years of practice, I haven't had to actually apply New York Times v. Sullivan.
Okay. Judge, well, I talked to Judge Yassen. Judge Cummings?
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon to you, sir. Tell me the rule that the United States Supreme Court follows in deciding whether to overturn precedent.
Thank you for that question, Senator.
You're welcome.
In deciding to overturn precedent, the court looks at a number of factors, including the soundness of the reasoning of the decision in question.
Form of monetary relief, Senator.
How much?
Senator, I can't recall specifically if there was a request made at the onset of the case, and I certainly can't speak to the aspects of the case that involve a confidential settlement.
I'm not asking you about the settlement. I'm asking you about the allegations. Were they in the hundreds of thousands, millions?
I don't recall, Senator, and I don't believe that they necessarily would have had to specify that in the complaint when they filed it.
All right. You were in state or federal court?
This was in federal court in the District of New Hampshire, Senator.
Okay. And at some point, you filed a motion with respect to the naming of the minor. Is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
Tell me about that motion.
The family of the minor.
But tell me about the motion first.
So they filed the motion seeking the protection to proceed anonymously.
Oh, so it was their motion.
That's correct. We had the school had an opportunity through its counsel to respond to that motion, and the school agreed to allow the family to proceed anonymously at all pretrial phases of the case and asked the judge as a condition of that to require the lawyers to try the case in a court of law and not in the media. We, as the lawyers approached the case, the school's perspective was that the request for the lawyers to try the case in the court of law as opposed to the media was fully compatible with the family's request to proceed anonymously and with privacy.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand. So the plaintiffs filed in the name of Jane Doe. And then the plaintiffs filed a motion. You didn't file a motion. The plaintiffs filed a motion to continue to ask to continue anonymously. Is that right?
That is correct, Senator.
And then the position of the school, you went to your client, St. Paul's, and said, how do you want to respond? And St. Paul says, we'll agree to that so long as the plaintiff's lawyers don't try this case in the media. Is that correct?
The position the school took was that they would agree to that provided that the lawyers didn't try the case in the media.
Okay. Was that your position or was it your client's position?
That was the school's position, Senator. I was just an advocate advocating for my client as I had a duty to do.
Okay. So that's what your client told you to file this response. You did. I'm assuming that St. Paul's School was getting the hell kicked out of it in the media. I'm not saying justifiably or not. I'm just stating that as a factual matter. And then what happened?
The judge never got to hear the motion that was filed, Senator, because the family that had filed the lawsuit elected to withdraw the motion before the judge could consider it.
And what was the effect of that?
The effect of that was that the motion that was filed became moot and the judge didn't need to address it and never addressed it. What I can say...
And so the plaintiff continued anonymously?
No, at that point, the family elected to proceed without using pseudonyms, Senator.
So the controversy then is about a motion that the plaintiffs filed that you responded to on behalf of your client, and the motion was never resolved, and the plaintiffs then decided to use real names. Is that right?
I believe that's correct, Senator. Again, my role in the case was as an advocate, advancing...
I get it. That's what I'm getting at. I mean, your job's to protect your client.
I had a duty as an officer.
Medicaid tried to cut, or wanting to hurt Medicare, tried to cut Medicare himself. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS as we call it, as you know, Mr. President, every year proposes what's called a physician's fee schedule for doctors who treat Medicare patients. If you're a doctor and you have a Medicare patient, you don't get to send the federal government a bill for whatever you think your services are worth. That's not the way it works. Medicare every year through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS every year proposes a physician fee schedule.